Brilliant. So, thank you very much for all giving up your Monday evening to come and have a chat to me about natural social character. I thought one of the things that I would start with is to put this into some context with you. So, I was just going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I ended up going from Claire in corporate into being Claire that ends up sitting up to her waist in mud in the pouring rain and still having a huge smile on my face when I'm working with the wolves. Um, so basically, I mean, to take you right back, I've always been one of these people that's been an avid learner and probably a bit of an overachiever. So I was a scholarship kid at school, and then I couldn't decide what to do at university, so I read cultural studies and sociology, and then decided to become a lawyer, and then wanted to climb the ladder as fast as I could. So I started zooming up the ladder, and within a couple of years was given my very own team to manage. And I realized really quite quickly that nothing that I had studied would prepare me for being able to lead a team of people. So I did what I do best. I started learning again, and I went back to university in my spare time and started learning about business and leadership. And so I've had this love relationship with looking at leadership and with working in the sphere of leadership, which has grown up alongside my corporate career. So these days I've got a very vibrant career. So I sit as a judge. I'm a partner in an international law firm still. I've got a non-executive director portfolio. I do some exec coaching, and I've also got a consultancy called Orthelian, which is how you will have come across this, where we do training in and around leadership. So over the years, I stayed in traditional corporate doing the odd bit of teaching with universities, but in 2016, I came out because I wanted to expand my horizons a bit. And that's how I've ended up with a portfolio career, and being able to do things like a master's in strategic business management. And I went on to do work in and around diversity and authentic leadership with the Chartered Management Institute and some other universities. And it was that work around authentic leadership which really started unlocking a lot of potential. And I really started seeing a change in a lot of the clients that I was working with that. But the thing is that we would work together for a period of time and people would have these massive breakthroughs. And then for some reason, people found it really difficult to get any traction as to how am I going to now implement this into my life and into the way that I conduct my business. So they got the theory, all the cerebral side of things, and that logic was there. But a lot of people really struggled with how do I actually tap into being myself, to being authentic, and to realizing what my strengths are. Because we are molded right the way from we start at school to go into this is the way things are done. This is the mold you have to fit. This is what success looks like. This is what a good leader looks like. This is what you have to do if you're a boss. This is what you have to do if you're a director. And the problem is it's stifled so much that by the time you get up to a senior position in your 30s or your 40s or older, you're suddenly asked to be authentic and you're not entirely sure who you are anymore. So that sent me off on a whole journey of my own where I've gone through coaching and leadership programs and all sorts of other things, trying to discover for myself what was the best way of making this work. And the thing was, as I said with people, I got to the point where I, like a lot of people, had really understood this phenomenally well in a very logical and very academic way. But what I needed was some way of dropping it into my embodiment and being able to actually live this work. So we go back about 4 years, and somebody who I was working with at the time happened to put up a picture of them sitting, not unlike that, beside a wolf as part of her training, because she was doing leadership in the wild and looking at developing people in that way. And I went, oh my goodness, I love dogs. I love wolves. How on earth did you manage to go and get to meet this wolf? So she gave me the details, and it was the beginning of COVID. And I pestered and pestered and pestered them. So as soon as any restrictions got lifted, I managed to get myself down there and I went in to meet the wolves. And I can remember standing outside the enclosure, asking myself quite seriously if I had possibly pushed things a bit too far and was perhaps losing my mind, because there is something at the back of my mind, and I know there's a couple of you who've been in with the wolves that are listening, um, that said going into this enclosure with a group of wild animals that have got the capability to rip you apart without particularly thinking about it might not be one of the best plans I've ever had in my life. So I was very much in fight or flight when I walked in. Sat myself down on the ground, and this group of wolves came bounding over, and one in particular, a great big white one, came bounding over to me, and he stopped in front of me and he looked at me. And I didn't feel scared in the slightest. In fact, I felt my entire neurological system, it's almost like it just went, oh, and took this great big sigh. And I have never been seen like that in my life. And it was one of those moments in my life where I went, this is something really special. So that began my love affair with working with the wolves, and trying to get some understanding of how the wolves function. Because the thing is that the wolves are really complex, and they're quite significantly misunderstood in the way that they're portrayed. And the reason for that is a lot of the research that was done about them was done in captivity, where people had taken wolves from various different packs that they'd managed to get hold of, thrown them into a very small cage, which is quite terrifying, with a group of other wolves that they don't know, with limited resources and limited space, and then gone, whatever they act like in there is clearly the way that they're going to behave universally. It's a bit like looking at humans in a war zone and saying that's the sum total of human interaction. It just isn't the way things work. So what Sean Ellis has managed to do is he's managed to create an environment where you can interact with the wolves on their terms, and it's a bit more like going down the coffee shop and having a chat with them than meeting them in a war zone, and that's the huge difference. So Sean Ellis's background is in the army, and when he came out of the special forces, he went into living with wolves. This was his way of really dealing with some quite complex challenges he had when he came out. So he's been able to observe them in their natural environment, and he's been able to become part of the family. So in order for us to be able to do this work with the wolves, there's a huge amount of work goes in behind the scenes. And that involves Sean and Kim, who obviously live with the wolves full time. And then there are a group of us who are instructors who spend frequent visits, weekends or weeks on end. I was down there last week, in with these animals, building a familiar relationship with them so that they trust us sufficiently that we can then bring visitors in to meet them on their terms and for them to interact with us. And they are fascinating animals. And the thing about wolves in particular is that wolves are pack mammals, as are humans, and we have evolved side by side throughout our very long history. And it's only quite recently that our evolution has deviated in the way it was. The wolves have carried on working with the full physicality and their full natural systems in place and in interaction with their environment, whereas humans, we've gone somewhere a little bit different. And I'm not entirely sure that we've got it right, because if you think about it, humans are the only animal that would create an environment for ourselves which is designed to stop us from thriving. And we, in fact, put our systems under so much stress that we cause ourselves huge amounts of disease and illness. And if you look at this from the outside point of view, if you saw an animal in the wild doing this, you would be baffled as to why that behavior was going on. So where we've got ourselves to as humans is we've got this huge natural system, this machine that we are navigating through the world with. And it's a bit like we've got a smartphone, but we're only using it to text, because we've closed everything down so much and we've thrown away the manual that we're not using our neurology. We're not using our ways of connecting with each other, our ways of being interconnected with our environment, our ways of problem solving, and our ways of being able to work out and flex our natural resilience in the way that we would have done historically. And so that primarily is what I've been looking to the wolves to find the clues to how we can step back into that. And the social character is one of those access points which people tend to find quite easy for us to start exploring some of this work, because a lot of us in corporate world in particular are familiar with the profiling tools that get used. So that in a nutshell is where I'm sort of starting to delve into our adventure this evening with the wolves. And it's an invitation, I think. You will all have had profiling tools. Some of you have heard some of my videos on social media and possibly thought, yes, that's me, no, that's me. But what I would suggest is, just as we run through this evening, come to this with an open mind and a beginner's mindset. And I will share with you that when I first started doing this work, I thought I was one particular character. And it turned out actually I wasn't at all, because when I got in with the wolves, they didn't react to me as that character. And in Sean Ellis's words, who did I think I was kidding? Well, I'd done a damn good job of kidding people for a very long time. Thank you very much. And I was quite happy forcing things through and carrying on trying to be something I wasn't. When he persuaded me to give it a go, being who I actually was. And my goodness, did life become easier when that happened. And that's the feedback that we've had from everybody else, from the hundreds of other people that we've had come through the centre and come and learn about this. So that in a nutshell is our starting point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through in brief what some of these social characters are. And some of them are more prevalent in the group than others. So the first one I'll start you off with is your, so that's just a quote about that's social character. If I let you read through that, actually, that probably helps you with this. So it's the key to understanding ourselves, our place in the world, and our strengths. So everything about social character is leaning towards your strengths. It's not leaning towards weaknesses. Wolves, which might come as a surprise to many of you, don't pick on the weaknesses in the way that you think they do. What they do is they look for weaknesses and they look to bolster that part of the family. They don't look to try and pick on someone and tell them they're not good enough to be fulfilling that role. And what it helps us to do is identify that value that we can most easily bring to the table. So again, as I'm going through this, I'm going to be focusing on the value that we can bring. And it tells us again what we need from others to thrive and reach our own unique potential. So we're coming at this from a very positive point of view. And I think it's also very key that I do say to you, there is not one of these animals or one of these characters that is particularly better in the human world at leadership than any other. What I will say is that people that are in their own natural social character have a much easier time of connecting and a much easier time of leading than those who are not. So the key is actually being in your character, not necessarily what character you are, and understanding that. So let's start with our strategic decision maker. Now, in the wolf pack, your decision makers are not the only ones that make decisions. I need to be clear about this. What they do is they make the long-term strategic thinking about where are we going to hunt, what are we going to do to manage our environment, because they do cultivate their environment. They decide which animals are going to pick off that herd because they want that herd to thrive so they've got more food next year. They need to know where particular plants are and they won't take too much from which plants because they treat themselves medicinally with them. And they need to think about what they're going to do for succession planning so they can actually manipulate using scent and hormones and behavior what animals are going to be born into the packs and what personalities they're going to have. And that might sound amazing, but it is something that humans, to an extent, have a capability to do as well. So if you look at the research after the Second World War, when we'd lost a huge amount of the male population, there was a disproportionate number of male children then born back into our population. And that's because there is something intrinsic within us that can dictate what kind of children are going to be had within a large population group to try and balance the scales. So that's what the wolves do, but they really fine tune it. And so your decision makers tend to be the smallest male and female actually within the group. They tend to be very picky about what they eat, which is why they're not as big, but they're all about quality and they're all about information. So they need that detail. They need to have as much information as possible about the members of the group, about what other groups are doing near them, about what's going on in the environment. So the kinds of people that you get that are strategic decision makers, will be the kinds of people that are avid readers, but they won't just have one book on the go. They'll have 5 or 6 littered around, and then they'll find something else on the internet that they want to learn about, and then they'll have found something over here that they're learning about. And when you talk to them, they tend to have really far-ranging interests and be partway through investigating multiple things at any one time. What they do need, though, is they do need information, and they need the time to work through that information before they will make a decision. So they're very, very careful and practiced about deciding how they want to go forward. And that includes how they decide about people. If they meet a new person in a social situation, they want to have all the information about them before they decide how they want the interaction to go. So throwing them into something like a surprise party when they're not expecting to deal with the situation and they've had no opportunity to gather the information and think about it first is going to send them reeling. So it's not necessarily that they are introverts or extroverts. It depends very much with them on what situation they're in. So if they're in a new environment, you will tend to find that they can be a bit quieter and more reserved, and they will take in the information around them before they start jumping in to being more sociable. But if they're in a familiar environment where they've already got the information and they know the people that are there, it's almost like they've got 2 personalities, because that's when you will see them as being really, really lively, and so on. And it was really interesting because I took my best friend along to do this work, and I would have sworn blind that she was an enricher right up until I took her in with the wolves. And the thing that I realized when she was in there that she wasn't at all, she was in fact, when I looked at it and stepped back, a strategic decision maker. But the thing is that because we'd known each other so long and she was so comfortable with me, whenever she was interacting with me, I saw that really bubbly, sociable side of her. So it's not that decision makers can't be bubbly and sociable. It's just that if you throw her into a situation where she's never met people, she'll suddenly go very quiet. And that is something, when I thought about it, I realized I had seen her do. How to work with them, you need to let them make the decisions. So my husband's a decision maker, and he needs to be allowed the time to think about decisions and to make them. He needs to be given the options and the information. If I throw the information at him and tell him this is what we're doing, he will find it very difficult to get on board with that. I'm not saying that you need to give them, months and months to come to a decision, because they're not procrastinating. It's just that you need to give them a chance to make up their own mind with the information that you've given to them. They do need to collaborate with others because they need to get information from other people. What they are looking for from anyone that's interacting with them is, what information can you give me? What information can you give me about you, about what's going on in this situation, about what's going on in the environment? Can you give me the information? So as I said, the key with them is to let them make the decisions. What is going to be more of a stretch for them is situations where perhaps you're dealing with an emergency or a situation like we were in the middle of COVID, where you just didn't have the information to be able to make a comfortable decision. And a lot of the decision makers I know, the strategic decision maker characters I know during that time, found it particularly difficult because they were having to make decisions on the fly without ever feeling like they'd ever actually got the information they needed to do that. You will hear me talking about, on each of these, about dysregulation and about lack of support. When I'm talking about regulation in the wolves, right from when they are very tiny puppies, and even beforehand when they're in the mother's stomach, they start learning how to regulate their neurological system and how to play with it and how to stretch it to make it more resilient. They will self-regulate, and when they are struggling, they will co-regulate with each other. And what that does is it calms their nervous system down to put them into a state where they are open to taking in the information around them, and where they are calm and collected and able to make informed decisions. And that's how they live their life. They don't live their life in fight or flight like most humans do these days. They live their life in a very ventral vagal system, and that's something that I explore in a lot more detail when I'm doing courses with these guys. So when I'm talking about dysregulation, I'm talking about individuals who have either because of their environment, because of the situation they're in, which is causing them a huge amount of stress, or they've been pushed into doing something they're not comfortable with, or perhaps they've got unresolved trauma, which has caused them to associate into a situation that they're not happy with, will find they're in fight or flight, and this makes them dysregulated. When that's in a decision maker, you can get a lot of anxiety because they're never quite sure that they've got the information. You can get a lot of difficulty in actually reaching a decision because they feel like they've always got to have more information and more information and more information. And they can find social situations particularly demanding and draining on them. So strategic decision makers, regulation, it's important for all of them, but particularly for them to be able to get through what they need to get through at work and also in a social setting. So that in a nutshell is your strategic decision maker. And this is Aowa, by the way, who is one of our pups who is just stepping into her role as decision maker. You can start when you start learning about these characters. There is a look they have about their eyes. And actually, if you start learning about the characters in humans, you will start realizing that humans have a look about them as well. So she will always look like she's studying something. She's always thinking about it. She's got a very studious look about her. Oh, sorry, jumping around. So the next one we've got is the Protector. Now, this is an Atari, and I promise no humans were damaged in the making of this picture. V slipped over in the mud, and Atari decided to help in the way that only she can. So Atari is a Protector. You usually have a male and female Protector, one of each in the pack. And they are the big wolf that you will normally think of at the front of the wedge. So if they are under threat, they are the ones that will beef themselves up and put themselves into the firing line to take the brunt of it. And they're bomb proof. They're completely unflappable. It takes an awful lot to get them to the point where they are stressed and unregulated. So they find it a lot easier to just walk through life in a very independent way. They're very much on their own. And we'll just get on with it. They're very much business first. And by business first, I mean, I am doing this task. We are getting on with it. That is the priority. And they're very much like the rules. So they're brilliant if you've set a task and you need someone to rally the troops to make sure everybody is doing what they should be doing in the way that they should be doing it. The difficulty can be is to get them. Sometimes they can be so rigid on wanting to make sure they understand the rules and everybody is sticking to them, that they can be a little bit stifling. And that's why they do need other people around them to remind them every now and then that they do need to lighten up and they do need to lighten the load occasionally. What they are brilliant at bringing to any group is a sense of safety and reassurance. So it's that calm within the storm while everyone else is losing their heads. They are the ones that stand there. It's calm and structured within the center of it, and it draws other people in. So as you can imagine, they are brilliant at working in high stress situations. So they're great in an emergency room or an emergency situation or dealing with a crisis because they can have that laser focus. What they are less inclined to do is to sit there having those long-term strategic conversations where you've got to hear everybody's point of view and where they've got to put up with listening to that other decision maker who's wittering on the what if and oh, I was reading this and I was doing that, or the enricher who wants to know how everybody feels about it. They can lose patience quite rapidly. So for them, they have to work harder at that side of their leadership. But that is your Protector. Now, when they are unregulated or they are put into a situation where they've got unresolved trauma, the way that presents itself is they can come across as a very dictatorial, and it can be very power over, very bullying and aggressive in their way in which they deal with other people. You will do this, and this is the way that we are going to do things, which obviously isn't productive. For most working environments, that's going to very much quickly stifle your team and cause you a lot of other issues. So that is your Protector. So now the next one is our risk assessor. Now, we haven't got one of these at the Wolf Centre. We haven't got an early warner at the Wolf Centre. And the reason for that is because we have an abundance of Protectors and an abundance of other characters And because of where it is and the way that Sean manages it, they don't feel like there are outside threats from the external environment because they've got giant fences around them and nothing comes into their environment unless it's gate kept by the humans that look after them. So for them, they don't need an early warner that is looking out, scanning the environment around them. So this is one that I've borrowed from one of the packs over in America that I've done some work looking at as well. So what does the risk assessor do? Well, you'll generally only find one of these very rarely within a population. They're the occasional people that, if they are very well adapted, they are brilliant at horizon scanning. They're not negative, but what they will do is they will see a risk or a challenge coming a mile off and say to people, I think we need to put some things in place around this. And in large corporate organizations, they can be hugely valuable when you look at risk management with them. Because they have got an almost sort of psychic ability to see things coming where other people are saying, how on earth did you put the picture together to know that that's the way that the market was going to go, or that's the way that our environment was going to change that we're working in. And it is because they really pick up on details in their environment. So they're the kind of people that you're walking down the street and a car drives past and you can ask them 10 minutes later and they'll tell you what the number plate is without even having to think about it. They're so details orientated. And they are always on. They're always sucking in information from their environment. What they need to thrive is they need effective assurance. They need to know that you've listened to what they've said. So, you know, in the wolf world, they're howling back the information to the pack because they're usually out there on their own. And it makes them sound quite anxious. They're not generally. They're usually out there in the wilderness, stood on their own, looking outside whilst the pack's back at the den site doing its own thing. So they can be quite hardy and quite confident in that way, but they need people to listen to their hunches and to tell them, I've heard you, I've heard what you're saying, we've got some assurance around this. And until you've given them the assurance around those concerns that they've raised, you're not going to get them on board with an idea. So you will get the odd early warner. Sadly, you don't get that many adjusted early warners or risk assessors in the corporate world or in the working world. And that's because our world and our environment puts people under so much stress that usually they're quite dysregulated. And when they are dysregulated, that leads to huge amounts of anxiety because they will see threats everywhere where there are none. And they will feel like nobody is listening when they are raising the alarm with other people and they are getting no assurance. So they tend not to be able to hack it in those high pressure environments, sadly. And so that natural strength that they've got that we could make a lot of use out of quite often gets lost. You've then got your testers. Now, don't be fooled by this. This is Took. Took's one of our puppy testers. Might look very fluffy, but goodness, can he be cheeky and quite annoying when he really wants to be. He is essentially the well-being police. So testers are the people that look at the people in your organization. They are really tuned in to the people in your organization, to your clients, what makes them tick, when they're not functioning at their full capability. So what the tester would do within a group of wolves is they go round and they test or sometimes annoy the other wolves within the group to see how they're responding and what reactions they're getting on any given day. And then they will report that information back to the other members of the group, to the decision maker, primarily who wants all the information, and to the other members of the group to say, do you know what? Our protector is not having a great day today. He's a bit ratty. He's like more likely going to fly off the handle. I don't think we should send him out by himself to look around the perimeter. We need to give him some more backup. So that's the role that they fulfill. In the human world, testers are quite often absolutely brilliant at team development. They're great in HR. They're great anywhere where they've got a group of people that they need to get working at their peak, because what they will do is they will instinctively see the potential in an individual and understand which buttons to press in order to nudge them to reach that potential. And they've got an uncanny skill for pushing people just far enough so that it stretches them so that they grow, but not so far that they keel over. And to do that, they've got to be very empathetic, but they've also got to not be scared of giving a challenge to people, and they need permission from the group to be able to give them that challenge. Now, with them, one of the things that will really trigger a tester is if you're not being authentic with them. Now, in the wolf world, they are tuned in to the chemicals in your body. They're tuned into the neurology, the body language, everything far more than we are. But as humans, don't discount that, because you still have the ability and a radar to pick up when what someone is saying or fronting to you doesn't really match what they're feeling inside. So if you've got someone that isn't being authentic to you, you can tell. Now, with a tester, that is something that is going to really, really be like a glaring foghorn to them because of the nuances that they pick up in individuals. So if you want to go and sell an idea to them or communicate with them and you don't believe in what you're saying, they are going to see that a mile off. And that's one of the reasons why humans who are testers also do tend to have quite a difficult time trusting people. And it's not because people are necessarily intentionally trying to mislead them. It's just that within our society, as I said at the beginning, we put so many masks on top of each other that actually somewhere along the way we can lose who we are. And that tester will be looking, going, I can see you're in there. I can feel there's a potential there, but this is this that I'm looking at, this that's communicating with me isn't you, and there's something off about you, which is why they have more trouble communicating with people who aren't in that authentic state. Their leadership style is hugely collaborative. They will delegate a lot. They will give the individuals what they're good at, and they will trust them to work alongside them. Tester's worst nightmare is somewhere where they've got to head out in front and just trust that everyone else is capable of doing their jobs, working at their full capacity, and is hopefully following them down the line towards the finishing post, without them being able to keep an eye on them and to give them a nudge when they need to. So that's much more of a stretch for them when they're put into that kind of situation. Now, you've then got the enricher character. I'm probably a little bit biased about the enrichers, which is the character which I am. It's the one I thought I was a protector, but it turned out that I'm an enricher, and you only have to see me interacting with the wolves in some of the videos that I post to see how clear it is the way in which they interact with me. They can tell you exactly what character you are. So this is Tolkien. Tolkien is about 10 months old now, and he is one of our very, very sociable and inquisitive enrichers. Now, the enrichers make up the bulk of the group, and that is because enrichers are the heart of the group. They're really sociable. They like being with other people. They like engaging with other people. So you can have as many enrichers as you want in a group together, and they're all going to get on with each other. Whereas some of these earlier characters that I have talked to you about, like your protectors or your decision makers, because they have their very defined role, if you have two people trying to do that in a group, they will quite often rub up against each other. Because I don't know if you've ever had that situation. I have it sometimes with my daughter, where you see somebody doing something which is exactly what you do, and it really winds you up. That's why those characters can sometimes buffer up against each other. And if you have a group where you just have one character and you don't have a diversity of characters, you can run up against a lot of problems. The one time where that's not going to be an issue is if you have a group of enrichers. And the reason is they will all get on with each other really well because they love interacting with other people, and they are the most adaptable character. That is both a blessing and a curse. When I say that, what I mean is if there's a gap in the group, they will adapt to fill it. So I'd had a gap in my surroundings, and I'd a very long time ago decided that I needed to adapt to be a protector because that's what was called for in and around the work that I did and the teams that I was leading. The difficulty why I say it's a blessing and a curse is brilliant because you can turn your hand to anything. The curse is if you get stuck in an adaptation, it's exhausting because it's not your natural character. And the other thing is that you can quite easily get nudged into taking on these other roles, which are not really core to you, a lot more easily than others. So you can feel like you're getting banged from pillar to post, filling in all the gaps within a team. And that can be really hard work, particularly if you're the only enricher that's in a team. That can get quite difficult. So if you've got someone who is a fully embodied enricher, what you will find is they are generally really enthusiastic about what they're doing. They're the kind of people that will jump in with both feet, give it their best shot. Again, it can be a blessing and a curse, because once they jump into something and they get going, don't have as great an off switch as some of the other characters. So Protector, for example, business done, job done, line drawn, let's all go home for the night. An enricher will be so keen to do a good job and find it so interesting and be enjoying being with the other people so much that you'll end up working longer hours than you would like to. You end up burning yourself out quite easily. You end up staying later because you're really enjoying that series on Netflix and you just want to see one more. You end up eating more cakes than you want to because you want to go out to the cafe and enjoy a coffee and a cake with everybody. All these kinds of things. So there is both a blessing and a curse a lot to the enricher character. They are the type of character that would love a surprise party. For me, all these people, brilliant, that's what we want. They are very trusting and forgiving as well. And that does wonders for their resilience. So they are, if you think about them in the wolf or the dog world, something really difficult will happen. And what you will see is they will shake it off. And they'll be the first one to wander back in and go, well, that happened, but we're not going to take that as gospel, are we? Because the situation's changed. Whereas others will take a lot more persuading. So your enricher, if you are trying to get an idea across to a group, they are fantastic first followers, because if you can connect in with them in an authentic way, they will enthusiastically drive your idea forward to the rest of the group, and that trust in the bigger picture will come much more naturally to them. So they make fantastic first followers. As leaders, they're very collaborative. They're brilliant at getting people enthusiastic about the work that they're doing. But they have to be very careful that they don't drive their entire team to burnout, because when they're enthusiastic and they're going, they don't stop, and then neither does the team that's following on behind them. So that's your enricher. Coming on then to our final character, and I love this picture because this is Forrest, or Fozzie, who was our diffuser. Sadly, Forrest passed away last year from old age, but this is him with my daughter and my husband. Now, diffusers are more rare. They're probably one of the rarest character types you will come across, because they are what you would probably call more grounded or more spiritual and much more visionary individuals. And they have this ability to flow their energy out over a group. So they can calm a group. If you've ever met someone who's known as a guru or one of these motivational speakers that can manage a room of thousands from the stage and have the emotions in the room roller coasting in the way that they want them, they're more than likely going to be a diffuser. They're natural born mediators. They're really self-assured because they are quite happy when there is conflict going on or difficulty to put themselves right in the middle of it and calm the situation down and be able to get everybody back into the point where they are all regulated and harmonized. And because of that ability to influence and inspire those people around them, that's why they're very inspiring leaders. They lead very much from the front by giving people the vision. If you want to get anything through to them, though, you've got to give them the vision first before you talk to them about the details. If they can't see the big picture, and by the big picture, I don't just mean for our organization, it'll mean this. They want to know, and where does that fit into our community? Where does that fit into our country? Where are we going with this 10 years down the line? So yeah, so that's your diffuser. If you need someone who's an inspirational figurehead, the diffuser is the kind of person that you want to go to. Where they are going to really struggle is the day-to-day operational detail. They want to be focused on the big vision. They want to be focused on moving the counter forward in big ways. What they don't want to be focused on is everybody's to-do task and micromanaging them. They're going to find that really, really difficult. So those are your core characters. Now then, this is where we start adding on some layers. So you've got the adopted roles. Now, at the point at which you're secure in your character, you're secure in your role, there are a few roles that are taken on within the pack. 2 of them are relevant to humans. The third is hunter, which is not relevant because obviously we don't go out hunting anymore. But the nanny role is the role which any character can step into, but it's a role where you go back to dealing with somebody right at the beginning of a developmental journey. And it can be dealing with a child, or it can be dealing with a new member of the group, or a new person who's come into your workplace. And you need to take on that role where the first thing you give them, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom layer is that safety. So you have to be a master at being able to self-regulate, co-regulate, make them feel safe in the environment so that they're secure to be able to start moving forward and to be able to start developing themselves. The other thing that you need to be at that stage is unconditional. So non-judgmental, unconditional. You need to set up the environment, and the nannies are great at doing this, where it's safe to fail, where you can experiment, where you can work out where the boundaries are, you can work out how things work. At work, that can look like giving them a task that is going to be easy for them to succeed at, but that is going to show them how the systems work, or show them how we like to problem solve, how we like to interact with each other in this environment. And you will be, when they come back with the difficulties, unconditional. It's not, oh God, if you not work that out, it's okay, well, let's look at this together. Let's do this together. And you take them up through the circles of development. Now, the wolves, I've mentioned circles of development there. The wolves have 4 circles of development that they take people through, and they take the pups through it. They take new members of the group through it. They take individuals that are struggling through it. And they always work in the same way up. There's the base layer, which is the unconditional, which brings online your care system within your neurology. You then got to the next level, which brings on your play system, which is your resilience, and your seeker system, which is your ability to problem solve. And then you bring on to the next layer, which is where you start introducing fear and grief and so on, and learning that elasticity before taking them up to the stage where you're ready to go out there into the big bad world and condition yourself. We can take humans through exactly those same stages. I've used it for onboarding people in my teams. It brings people on board far more quickly. It integrates them into the team, and that storming that happens in a team when new people come in settles down far more quickly, and it gets the team working much more efficiently, a lot more quickly as well. So having that nanny role is absolutely key. In the wolf environment, what they're doing ideally is they've got nannies in there mentoring people, they've got the player doing the job, and then they've got the pups coming through with their succession. So the older members or the more experienced members of your teams, or if you're at the top end of your team, it may be you want to start thinking, should I be taking more of a nanny role to develop the junior members of the team, because the senior members are there and can start looking after themselves more. The other one that is worth bearing in mind, and a lot of people where they've started their own business will be very familiar with this, is the lone wolf. Now, in the wild, lone wolves are only ever a transitory state, ideally. You will only ever find a wolf that is living completely by itself if we as humans have done something to mess with their environment or remove them from their pack, which has caused them to end up on their own. So when I say transitory state, something that we are not, and they are not, designed to live like for any length of time, because your lone wolf has to take on board all of the roles at the same time. So they've got to make the long-term decisions. They've got to be laser focused so that they can get through and keep themselves safe. They've got to be able to think about what's happening in the moment. And they've got to be able to look for the early warning, check in with themselves, and make sure that they've been able to get everything that they need. And doing all of that for yourself is absolutely exhausting. It's a bit like having somebody who's an entrepreneur who starts up their own business, and they suddenly have to do all the marketing, and they're trying to manage the business, and they're trying to deliver everything, and they're trying to do everything at once. It's something that'd be quite positive and liberating when you first start, and it's good for certain brief periods of time. but you're not going to be able to survive doing that and doing everything by yourself for any length of time. So those are the consciously adopted rules. You've then got the associated rules. Now, this is what I was referring to earlier when I said positively, you can choose to step into one of the other rules if it's missing in a group. And once you start building up your toolkit, you can learn to embody each one of these characters. You will never embody the other characters as well as your natural one, but you can learn to step into that role in a healthy way to meet a specific need. And that's a great way of doing it. But if you get stuck in them longer term, so you're always fulfilling that need within a group, or because of the environmental pressure, or because you feel like you've got to be this kind of leader, or this is what's expected of me, and you've got no support to be able to develop yourself, or you're lacking in some of those circles of development yourself and have just been dropped in the deep end, it's not a great thing for you. It's not a great thing for your neurological system. It's exhausting. And that's when we see people burning out. And it's not that they're not good at what they're doing. It's not that they're not fantastic leaders. And it's certainly not that they're failing. It's just that the environment and the way in which they're working isn't working with their neurology. You're not working with your natural strengths and capabilities. So you end up setting yourself up to fail. So that then comes in to communication. So our communication, first thing for the wolves is always going to be connection, and that authentic connection, self to self. I see you, you see me. It sounds a bit like something out of Avatar when you say it that way, but it really is the I see you and your intrinsic value is the way in which the wolves greet each other. As I said, they talk about self and co-regulation. They talk about emotional balance. Within individual characters, having an awareness of whether you're a big chunk or a little chunker really helps. So what I mean by that is saying, am I someone that needs to see the big picture and work into the detail, or someone who needs the detail and to work out? And you can probably guess which of the characters from the descriptions are going to fit into that. So you've got your big chunkers, who are your enrichers and your diffusers. Your little chunkers are going to be your strategic decision makers, your testers, and so on. You're also going to have there looking at whether they are going to be interested in the day-to-day operational details. So they're business first protectors, or your testers that are looking at what's happening with people on a day-to-day basis, or your enrichers who like to live in the moment, or you're going to need people that are looking at that longer term vision, which is your strategic decision makers and your diffusers who are looking further ahead. And you need to understand what your primary needs are so they're being met, and also what the primary needs are of those around you. If everybody's got what they need, you're going to find that everybody is far more easily stepping into their natural potential and strengths so that they can give their best and bring what they've got to offer to the table, rather than giving a half-hearted attempt to step into something else. As I said, we've talked about development, we've talked about the dysregulation. The dysregulation brings out negative aspects of the wolf characters. It brings out hugely negative aspects of human character. And so learning how to regulate yourself, learning how to balance that emotional seesaw between those different systems, so the care system and the play system and your seeker system, should be the things that you are living in the majority of the time. You shouldn't be living in what most of us are doing, which is the fear system, which is, if I don't do this, this will happen. If I don't do well at work, I'm going to lose my job, then I'll have no money, then I'll lose my house, then I'll lose my family. That catastrophizing fear system. If I don't buy this thing, I'm not going to look nice and people will think that I'm not attractive enough. Everything around us in our modern environment drives us into the fear system. That's the negative side of that emotional seesaw. So being able to learn how to tip that system back and to co-regulate makes everything so much easier, because your natural neurological system will lift into ventral vagal. You'll be open to opportunities. You will not be putting stress on your body. So those niggling bits of illnesses. So a lot of people in the corporate environment deal with things like IBS or they've got dry patches of skin and eczema, all these kinds of things that come out as a result of stress or that are exacerbated by stress, the autoimmune diseases and everything else are all because we're wandering around in fight or flight in that fear side of the seesaw in the dorsal vagal system, and we're not coming up for air. We shouldn't even be coming up for air. We should be living in that ventral vagal. And when you do that, it's amazing how much easier life gets, how much easier connecting gets, how much easier influencing other people gets, how much easier being authentic gets, because you're not trying to overcome the fear or to get yourself out of that negative system. So that's where conscious networking comes in. And again, this is something that I explore with people. This is to support your strengths. So once you've worked out what character you are, the next thing you need to think about is, okay, so if I am, for example, a strategic decision maker, I need people around me of lots of different characters that are going to bring me lots of information. If I'm a protector, I need people around me that stop me from getting too serious and bring me back into the moment and bring me back into realizing the joy in life. If I'm a tester, I need people to tell me when I've gone too far. I need those people to interact with me and to give me permission to help them to achieve their potential. If you're an enricher, you need the sociability around you, but you need people who are going to tell you when you need to slow down and when you're going too fast. So you can see how each of them, you've got your own needs in order for you to be able to stand on that platform and bring your strengths. And you need a multifaceted network. Within the wolf families, there are, as I said, the only one you will find in large numbers are the enrichers, because they are able to adapt and fill in lots of different roles and have their own individual strengths within that. Beyond that, you will only have limited numbers of the other characters, because they recognize that in order for the unit, the group to work as a whole, or the team to work efficiently as a whole, you need aspects of all these different characters to be in there, and you need different types of expertise. And this is something, sorry, that came out very heavily when I was looking at diversity. So I did a number of years back now for the Chartered Management Institute. I spent some time looking at organizations as to how successful they were in terms of the impact of the diversity they had at a senior management level, and why some organizations which ticked all the boxes did particularly well, and others that ticked exactly the same boxes in terms of ethnicity, sexuality, social background, and so on, didn't have actually as much success. And the thing is when you look at diversity, yes, you need people from the different backgrounds and different perspectives, but what you need different ways of thinking. If you've got a team where everybody thinks and acts in the same way, and you all have the same kind of tendencies, what you get is groupthink. That's not conducive to problem solving. It's not conducive to driving things forward. And what it is everybody has the same strengths, but everybody has the same weaknesses. And your entire team will then only have those strengths and only have those weaknesses. If you've got a balanced team where you've got a diversity of characters and a diversity of thought and background, what you're going to get is a team that is far quicker to problem solve, much faster to move forward, where any weaknesses are smoothed out and where they're all playing to their strengths. So that's your multifaceted network that you put around it. And then weaving is I talk about it by weaving, because if you think about the way in which they make up their teams, it's almost like they've got a two-way weave. So across one way, they've got their peers, which is that multitude of different networks that they've got there of all those different people that have different personalities and different strengths that they're going to bring to the table. Within that, you need to remember that as humans, we are quite often told you get one partner or you have one best friend, and you then look to them for everything, for all of that support. Again, that's not how we're designed to work. We're designed to have a network of people around us that are different, that we go to for different things. And people should come to us for different things as well, where we fit into their network. So that's across the way, your peers. Coming down the way above that, you have mentors. These are the people that are in the nanny state that are going to unconditionally give you their time and their energy to help you develop and help you bring you on so that you are progressing. Underneath that, then you need your succession. You need those people that you're bringing up within your team, or you need those people that you know you can rely on to delegate to. So you are acting in a nanny role to them to bring them up through the circles of development. And again, you want to be bringing people up who are different characters so that you know who you can delegate what to and what's going to be playing to their strengths, because that's what stops you from burning out and allows you to rise, because you can do more work by spreading it evenly with those people that you've got around you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to have a massive team at work working underneath you. It could just be you, but you've got a network of people that you call upon to help you with this particular task, or with your social media, or you've got a VA, or you've got somebody who really likes doing the accounting work and looking through the detail of it. You can find people that you can bring on within your organization. If you've got a fairly small team where there's not enough there, look for the key people that would work within other teams that you can network and connect in with. And that's going to be the key to you being able to move up through the organization. So one of the things that I did without realizing it when I climbed the ranks very quickly in the legal profession was I got on very well and connected in with my team, but I got to know people in all the other teams, and I got to know secretaries in other teams. I got to know the people on reception. I got to know the cleaners. I got to know the caterers. Because of my natural networking and sociable character, it was something that came easily to me. And I was able to identify who I needed for what. So when I needed to pull something off, and when I was under pressure, I could go, could you help me with that? Could you help me with this? Can I pull you in for that? Can I pull you in for this? Networked it very quickly, and the job got done, and everybody went, that's amazing. Claire's somebody we need to have heading up the teams. So that's what you need when you think about the weaving. You need to be pulling yourself up with mentors, your peers beside you, and then your succession coming through underneath you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there and see if anybody's got any questions, because I have just thrown a huge amount of information at you there, which hopefully has given you a bit of an overview. Has anybody got any ideas about what character they think they might be? Because I know
There, I might be an enricher. I think so. Yes. There are other characters, I'd love to pretend to be, but I'm not.
but you can, as long as
Yes,
you
but then it does grow tiring. Like you said, it does grow tiring. I ended up being elected onto all sorts of committees, which felt like a great idea for 24 hours, and then go, yeah, get me off here.
yeah. And I think that the thing is as well, if you're looking for clues about your character and you're still, I'm not quite sure. I mean, one of the best ways to come is obviously to come down, meet the wolves, and get the direct feedback from them, because they do see straight through you. When you meet them, they pick up from you what's going on with your neurology. They'll peel back those masks faster than any kind of personal development program you have ever been on, and there is nowhere to hide from them, and they will react to you as to what you are. But the other thing you can do is you can look at what feedback you've got. So if you've got any feedback from any of your clients or customers, or you've had feedback in appraisals, look at the comments as to what people said you were good at. I mean, I always got comments about how much people enjoyed spending time with me and enjoyed being around me, how I made things fun to get through, how I made things more accessible. All of the comments that I got, and when I was in my flow, and the bits that people went, that's when Claire's and her magic are all the enricher character. But as I said, back when I started this, going back into 2020, I turned up and I went, I'm a litigation lawyer. I stand up in front of people for a living. I am laser focused on the outcome of my cases, and I can stand there and take a beating for them. That's what I am. It wasn't at all. And I've looked back now on appraisals going back into my 20s, and it was there. It was staring me in the face. Just needed to know what I was looking for. So I've got a couple of people who have been in with the wolves here. I don't know, Claire, Helen, do you want to talk about what your experience was? What you found out about your character?
I wish I'd done this before I went in, and then I'd have understood what the hell was going on. Because they just give you a bit of a talk, don't they, before you go in, and then and I just chilled out and enjoyed my time with
Yeah.
them. But I think I was worried before I went in because I'd had a dog psychologist for one of our Sprockers who's I mean, he's had childhood trauma. He was a rescue with two broken legs. So it's not me, it's him, or it's his previous experiences. Do you know what I mean? But the dog psychologist very helpfully made me think it was me. So that, and it's funny because I was looking forward to the wolves for ages, but then just having the talk about they can see through your mask and they won't like it if you're putting on a mask. It reminded me of that dog psychologist thing. I was the problem with my dog, and
Yeah.
but Sean beautifully reassured me
I
before
think
we went in there.
I think the thing about the wolves is though that there's no judgment there. There is, they
Yeah,
look at you and they gather the information and they respond to you, but they don't care what your name is or what job title you've got or what bank balance you've got.
yeah,
Look at you and they just view you as going, that's interesting. Because what they're looking at is, are you going to be useful to us? What's
yeah. And I
the
think, and what you,
use of you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And what you said about then looking in their eyes, and it just took a split second, and then I was instantly relaxed and playing with them, and then they were licking me and everything. It was
Yeah.
brilliant. And then they went off with this jumper that I'm wearing now that's got several holes in it.
Yeah, they can be a little bit magpie-ish.
Um, and what you said about being a protector, so I'm an orthopedic surgeon, so I think I should be in the role of protector, and I will step into that role, but actually it's maybe not my alpha type or whatever, not my true type.
Yeah, it might
Interesting.
not be your natural social character.
Mm,
I think the thing is when you went in with the wolves, I mean the program that you were going on was about connecting back with the wild as I've been through the same program that Helen was on. And I think what you're trying to achieve on that when you go in with the wolves is very different to the work that I've started doing with them.
yeah,
Um, so there are layers and layers that you can come down, and this is why I've developed a whole sort of educational program now in a 3 days where you go in and you really immerse yourself into learning that neurology. That drop that you feel that you've described beautifully there of I was worried and then it was like everything just went, oh, that is the co-regulation neurological drop, and you can learn to do that with other people. So I have taken that into, I mean, if you imagine what I do for a good chunk of my time for my living, I work in litigation situations as a mediator and as a judge, and I'm working with people where they come in and they're like this, having the capability without even speaking to them to get them to go, I'm not in a threatening environment, has been an absolute game changer. And it is something that once you've felt it and once your body goes, oh, I can do that, it's a natural ability. It's something naturally we can do for each other. So when you start working on yourself and you start learning that, you get those reference experiences to what that feels like. It's that little piece of magic that was sat there all along that we've just forgotten about that you can then take out. And it's phenomenal working with clients. I use it with my children. The way that they teach the human approach at the Wolf and Dog Centre, they use that with domestic dogs. And sometimes it is because your neurology is out of whack that your dog is struggling to connect in with it with domestic dogs. Doesn't necessarily mean it's your fault how your dog's working. It's a journey that you end up going on together, Helen. So I'm not quite sure why the psychiatrist told you that, but it's a two-way journey the way that they work with the dogs up there. What about you, Claire? Can I pick on you?
You can absolutely pick on me. Can you hear me all right with my
Yeah,
headphones?
you can.
Okay, good. So we had an interesting one, didn't we, when I was down there trying to work out what I was, what I am, and then learning that I am a diffuser explains so much. So, I mean, we spoke this morning, right? I was not in a happiest of places. I was having a Monday morning, and I went to see my friend who was also having a Monday. And I now know like we completely co-regulated with each other. Like we both had this horrendous day and we left like with ease and laughter and all of the things. And actually I reflected after we spoke this morning, I was like, we did finish that call with laughter, because we had both, by the time we finished the call, we'd both dropped and gone, oh yeah, no, it's fine, actually everything's okay. And I find myself experiencing, like you're saying, that reference point of dropping in, just like Helen said, that kind of just, oh, it's like a full body exhale. And I find myself experiencing it in different places, that when we've been in Wales for ECA and then other environments. And what I'm learning, because of this diffuser, because of the characteristics, what I'm realizing is that it's not a particular thing that I do, it's just how I show up. So when people say, oh, how do you do what you do? I'm like, oh, I just kind of find myself moving along. Or, you know, if the group needs someone to be daft to break the tension, then I'll find myself doing that. It's not a conscious thing. I'll just end up being an idiot. And then, you know, so what I've, the point of all of that is finding that it's okay to just be me.
Yeah.
And then seeing where I have, you know, what you've explained beautifully about trying to do operations, or what you were saying about, you know, generally struggle with day-to-day operations. Well, that's exactly what we were talking about this morning, all the stuff I've been finding really difficult. Oh yeah, that's because I have to muscle up a lot of energy and effort to do it. And so, oh yeah, I can't actually do that for an extended period of time, because and then yeah, learning so much about how showing up in my natural state doesn't expend the energy. It doesn't cost as much energy as trying to be all of these other things.
Yeah. And that's been probably one of the most amazing discoveries that I've had doing this work with the wolves, is that it's easy.
Yeah.
And I realized when I started doing this, I had a huge belief that anything that was worth doing had to be hard work. Because everywhere that I had got to, I had pushed through, I'd worked the longer hours so that I could get the promotion. I'd done the effort, I put the effort in, I got the next qualification, I'd done it. And then I find at the end of the day, the secret sauce was maybe I should just relax into being me. And there was a lot of resistance around that when I went that it cannot be that simple as to find that what I needed was reference experiences, of which the wolves has been one of the most transformative that I've found, but reference experiences that would show me how to manage my own neurology and how to just be in my natural character and go, do you know what? There are these things that I do that are like magic, which a lot of other people can't do, and they don't take any effort. As Claire just said, I'm not consciously going, oh, how do I do this? It just happens when I'm in flow. It's just there. So what I'm not selling to people is a 12-step program of, if you mold yourself in this way and if you parrot this or if you do that or anything like that. What I'm giving people is an invitation to come and get to know themselves and to work out and getting to know themselves, to get to know people around them better, and actually to make their life easier. Because it doesn't have to be difficult to connect with other people, to break down that barrier of getting that instant trust from people, that instant co-regulation and connection in with them, where you can take people on the journey with you, where you can take a team on the journey, where you can get everyone working to their potential. Actually, it's meant to be easy. We are built to be able to do that really, really easily. Why do we make it so difficult for ourselves? There's just something about humans that we've got to find the hard way, haven't we? So, so has anybody got any other questions? Okay, so
Can I actually ask what happened to Forrest? Because
So
I thought he was going to have an operation on his back legs in September.
yeah, so Forrest was born with a genetic condition in his back legs, and as he got older, he was getting to the point where he couldn't walk. Now, in the wild, he would have just faded away. Obviously, we loved Fozzie to bits, and we did everything we could to mean that didn't happen. So we got him the operation. He had physio, he had everything else afterwards, but actually,
Didn't
his heart
work.
wasn't in it. He just This is not how he wanted to live, and he did what would naturally happen in the wild, and he just faded away, unfortunately, which was utterly heartbreaking for us. Um, and anybody that met Forrest, I mean, he's the wolf that I picked to introduce my daughter to, because he was
Mm.
the most gorgeous spirit you've ever met. Um,
I know. I mean, he
that's
picked me.
yeah,
I mean, every group I went into over the 3 days, he came to me, you know.
yeah.
It was really special. I'm very sad I didn't realize.
But the thing that's really interesting is he did a lot of mentoring, that nanny role with the pups. So the next generation through that are coming through. Now they don't have a diffuser in their group, in their sort of their little group of 7. But the one that he spent the most time with, Tolkien, who's the one I was taking the selfies with, he is bringing online characteristics of Forrest. And there are times when his mannerisms or the way that he deals with a situation, and we've all sat there and gone, it's Forrest. Oh, so he's nannied that back into the packs.
Oh, that's great.
So he's not gone. There is
Mm.
still a very strong influence of him sat in there. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you are interested in learning more about the wolves, there are a number of ways that you can do it. So obviously I've got a program that I run, which is it's not as heavy going as tonight. Tonight I've given you an awful lot of information, but what I do is for a few weeks before we go for a 3-day retreat, I drop in information just steadily into a group, so that you can pick it up gradually, and play with it. And the whole thing about this is having a play with some of the things, having a play with the characters, having a play with circles of development and everything. And then we go for a 3-day immersive retreat. And the immersive retreat is all about those reference experiences. So what I was saying earlier about saying, once you've felt it, your body remembers that it can do these things. And so we've designed a whole weekend. We've got an amazing site that we use, which is called Kabila, which is up on Bodmin Moor, where we create a village for the weekend, and you all have beautiful luxury wooden huts where you've got your own wood burner and you've got your 4-poster bed with your Egyptian cotton, so there's no roughing it. You're in the wild and you're looking out over Bodmin Moor out of the window, but you're nice and cozy and very comfortable. And we've got monsoon showers with underfloor heating, the whole works. But you step out of the front door and you are on Bodmin Moor in this ancient wild landscape, and right beside it is one of the only temperate rainforests left intact in the world. So we go down into that rainforest, which is just magical because it's got so much biodiversity. It's got more biodiversity than almost anywhere else in the world. It's been studied by lots of universities. People get very excited about the Kabila rainforest. And you can feel the life around you. You can feel the life under you. It's got ancient stone circles in there, and it goes down into a river where we can do dips in the river. But the river, you don't have to worry about getting cold. They've put a sauna in beside it. So we've done everything so that you can have the most amazing reference experiences without having to really rough it out in the wild, in order to get them. And as part of that weekend, we do a lot of embodiment work. We do some sound work, and we do some things playing with your neurology. And then we spend a whole day at the Wolf Centre, in and out with the different groups of wolves. We'll spend part of it looking at character, part of it looking at different types of development. And if we're very lucky, because we run them from May to September, hopefully we might have some wolf pups as well, so people can look at that care system coming in right from the beginning. And you get to go in and you meet the wolves, on their terms, face to face. They're not tame. They don't come on a lead. You go into an area that they're used to hosting visitors in. We open the gate and we invite them to come and have a chat with us. And they decide whether they're going to interact, and they decide how long they can be bothered with us, or we can be bothered with them. So there's no barriers, and there's no training so that they'll come up and sit beside you for a photo or anything like that. The way they interact with you is responding to how you are as an individual. So you get instantaneous, huge quantities of feedback from the experience as well. So that's how we work with them. So that's the program that I run. The other thing that I do is, if any of you have got teams that you'd like to bring down, I can do bespoke team days. So I do some days where I will look at a specific aspect or something that a team's particularly interested in, and we'll spend a whole day in with the wolves working on that. Or some people have done it as part of, say, they've got a mastermind group, or they've got a group they're working with themselves and they want to have that reference experience. We can work that in for them. Or I do one-on-one VIP days, which is where you get to come and spend a day down at the Wolf Centre, and you get me and Sean Ellis and Kim Ellis for a whole day to yourself, and you get the Wolfies for the day to yourself, and we will take it wherever you want to take it, and you can spend more time interacting with them, and we can spend more time peeling off some layers and seeing what it is you want to work with. So there's lots of opportunities of different ways that you want to work with it. The other thing that I did want to mention as well is, I know that a couple of people have said to me about wanting to do the full leadership program, but because of circumstances, they work for non-for-profit, they're a very small organization or have their own business, they haven't got the finances at the moment. I do bursaries and scholarships. So if this is something that you are genuinely interested in taking out there into the world, and that you want to come and immerse yourself in this and start using this, have a chat with me. So reach out to me and have a chat to me, because this is something that I really want people out there to know about. I spent years finding this. I can get it out to people in a few days. People don't need to spend years about this, but it can be absolutely life-changing. So there we go. So thank you very much. I've gone on, sorry, I'm 20 minutes past, but there we go. But hopefully you've all found that really useful.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I'm very sorry I was late.
Oh, please don't worry. It's been recorded if you want to catch the beginning.
Great. Yeah, I will.
But I think all of you are all of you in the Facebook group as well. So if you go back tonight, I have thrown you so much information. I appreciate some bits of it were in videos on the Facebook group you might have seen as well. But if you go back and you're pondering on something and you're having a bit of a think about it, drop it in the Facebook group or drop me a direct message and let's have a chat about it, because I'm always interested about what people are going to take from this. So that would be great. So thank you very much. What a lovely way to spend a Monday evening.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you
Claire.
very much.